A man who built his entire career communicating with the dead suddenly found himself fighting to stay alive. Tyler Henry, the 29-year-old medium who read for celebrities like Selena Gomez, RuPaul, and Jada Pinkett Smith, underwent 3 brain surgeries in 6 months, each one more urgent than the last. His own brain, the very tool he claimed connected him to the other side, had been quietly betraying him since birth. But the full story is far darker than any headline reveals. Tyler Henry Colwin was born on January 13, 1996, in Hanford, California. Not a big city, not a place where careers are launched or legends are made. Hanford sits in the San Joaquin Valley, flat, quiet, and largely unremarkable. It was exactly the kind of place where a story like his should never have started. But it did, and it started at 10 years old. He woke up in the middle of the night with what he would later describe as an overwhelming knowingness. Not a dream, not a feeling he could shake off and go back to sleep. Something certain. His grandmother was going to die. He got up and went straight to his mother's room. He was still trying to explain what he was sensing when the phone rang. The call confirmed exactly what he had been trying to say. According to Henry's own account in a 2018 interview with the Asbury Park Press, the moment felt like a memory, as though it had already happened before it did. That one night became the axis around which his entire life would turn. He didn't retreat from it. He leaned in. By age 16, Tyler was performing readings at a local venue called the Cosmic Corral in Hanford. Word spread the way it does in small towns, quietly, then suddenly everywhere. Teachers, classmates, neighbors, people started coming to him. He was practical about it too. He enrolled in college with a plan, become a hospice nurse, help people through death in a way that made sense on paper. But a psychic he consulted told him something specific, that at 19, he would begin filming a television show. He didn't believe it. Then he turned 19. A television producer sat across from him and became a believer before the reading was over. Within months, a deal with E! Entertainment was on the table. The hospice nursing career never happened. What no one knew, not his mother, not his producers, not the 900,000 viewers who would eventually tune in each week, was that something had been quietly growing inside Tyler's brain since birth. Not a gift, a cyst, and for the next decade, it would grow right alongside his fame. If you woke up one night knowing someone was about to die, what would you do? Tell us in the comments, because Tyler's answer to that question shaped the next 2 decades of his life. Every weekend, while other teenagers in Hanford were sleeping in or watching football, Tyler Henry was in a car heading to Los Angeles. His mother, Teresa, drove him every single weekend. A teenager with no agent, no publicist, and no industry connections, just a growing list of clients in Hollywood who had heard about him through someone who had heard about him through someone else. That is how it started. Word of mouth, moving faster than either of them expected. Then came a Christmas party in Beverly Hills in 2013. Tyler sat across from Michael Corbett, an Emmy-winning actor and television host, and did what he always did. By the time the reading ended, Corbett was not a skeptic anymore. He told TV Insider directly that he became a firm believer before it was over. He didn't just walk away impressed. He pursued a television deal on Tyler's behalf. E! Entertainment said yes. Tyler was still 19 years old. Hollywood Medium with Tyler Henry premiered in January 2016. It drew nearly 900,000 viewers per episode at its peak. For a cable reality show built around a teenager from a Central Valley farming town, those numbers were extraordinary. After just the first season, Tyler told the Hanover Theater that he had already received over 175,000 requests for private one-on-one readings. The list kept growing. It would eventually reach a reported 300,000 people, most of whom would never get a session at all. He appeared on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. He launched a Netflix series. He sold out live shows across dozens of cities. Celebrities who had lost parents, siblings, and children sat across from him and, in many cases, left in tears, but not from sadness. To his fans, Tyler Henry was something rare, a genuine connection to people they had lost. To his critics, the math looked very different, and they were starting to publish their findings. Fame has a way of inviting examination. The bigger Tyler's platform grew, the more carefully certain people began watching. Susan Jerbick was one of them, a scientific skepticism activist with a documented history of investigating psychic performers. Jerbick published detailed analyses of Tyler's televised readings. Her conclusions were direct. She argued that his statements were not evidence of contact with the dead, they were evidence of probability. When Tyler warned actor Alan Thicke about heart and blood pressure concerns during a filmed reading, it registered as remarkable to viewers. Then Thicke died of aortic dissection in December 2016 at age 69, and Tyler's fanbase pointed to the reading as proof. Jerbick pushed back. Heart disease, she noted, is the leading cause of death for American males. Warning a middle-aged man about heart problems, she argued, was not a prediction. It was playing the odds. The criticism went deeper than individual readings. Investigators pointed to a structural pattern across many episodes, statements that were broad enough to apply to almost anyone. Emotional confirmation from grieving clients who were searching for meaning. Questions framed as revelations. Critics specifically raised concerns about whether production teams were gathering background information on celebrity guests before filming even began. In an industry where pre-show research is standard practice, the line between intuition and preparation is difficult to see on camera. Tyler rejected every claim. In every interview, every public forum, every response to media scrutiny, he maintained that his abilities were genuine. He never wavered publicly. And for years, the debate stayed exactly where it had always been, believers on one side, skeptics on the other, with no new information to move either of them. But there was something neither side had accounted for. Tyler's brain was not like other people's brains. Not metaphorically, literally, structurally, in ways that had been silently true since the day he was born, and that neurologists would not fully document until 2025. The question no critic had ever thought to ask was quietly forming its own answer inside his skull. What the doctors found inside his brain connects to every reading he has ever done, and that story is still unfolding. Subscribe now so you don't miss where this goes. The cyst had been there his entire life. A colloid cyst, congenital, fluid-filled, sitting near the center of the brain. Tyler had been diagnosed with it as a teenager. For years, it did nothing visible. No dramatic symptoms. No crisis. Just a quiet, slow-growing presence that doctors monitored and Tyler largely set aside. He had a career to build, a waiting list of 300,000 people, and a television audience that needed him present and focused. So he kept moving, and for a long time, the cyst led him. Then 2025 arrived, and everything shifted. The cyst began releasing fluid. That fluid had nowhere to go. It built up around the brain, creating pressure, a condition called hydrocephalus. It is not subtle when it progresses. The pressure affects cognition, balance, vision, and basic function. Tyler's medical team made the call quickly. Surgery was necessary, and it could not wait. The timing was striking. Tyler had married his longtime partner Clint Godwin at the Beverly Hills Courthouse on May 7, 2025. 7 days later, he was posting from a hospital bed. On May 14, 2025, Tyler shared an update on Instagram. The surgery, he wrote, had been a success. His medical team had removed most of the growth. He described the cyst as having an incidence rate of 1 in 3 million, a number so rare it was almost difficult to process. In an exclusive interview with E! News cited by multiple outlets, Tyler reflected on what had frightened him most going in. Not the surgery itself, not the recovery. He said he had been worried that anything involving the brain might affect his ability to do readings. That was the loss he feared. He also, characteristically, found a way to make light of the odds. According to post-surgery statements cited by both Reality T and E! Online, Tyler quipped that with a 1 in 3 million diagnosis, he probably should play the lottery. He was on bed rest for a month. Then he was back. Within weeks of the operation, Tyler was performing readings again as part of his live show series. His recovery, by every public account, appeared swift and complete. It wasn't. Barely 5 months after that first surgery, something changed again. The swelling came back. The symptoms returned. And this time, the situation was more serious than before. On November 13th, 2025, Clint Godwin opened Instagram and posted a statement. It was calm, measured, the kind of writing that comes from someone who has learned to hold things together in public while something difficult is happening in private. Clint confirmed that Tyler's medical team had determined another surgery was necessary. The recurring cyst, the returning swelling. The same problem that was supposed to have been resolved 6 months earlier had come back, and this time it had not waited. Today, Tyler underwent his third brain operation, Clint wrote, as reported by Reality T, and is recovering well tonight. Third surgery. 6 months. The math was not lost on anyone following the story. The first recovery had looked almost effortless from the outside. Tyler was back on stage within weeks, performing readings, making jokes about lottery odds. This time was different. The recovery did not move quickly. It did not look smooth. And Tyler, to his credit, did not pretend otherwise. He posted updates through his Instagram stories. Not polished, not produced, just honest. He described the memory loss in terms that were difficult to read. He said he felt like a goldfish, able to hold only around 10 minutes of short-term memory at a time before it slipped away. Conversations, names, moments that happened an hour ago, gone. He noted it was gradually improving, but the word gradually carried weight. This was not a fast recovery. This was a man relearning the basic continuity of his own day. Most people have never had to rebuild their own memory from scratch, but if you've ever watched someone you love lose pieces of themselves, you understand exactly what that silence feels like. Then he shared something else, something that no one expected. During the surgery, Tyler wrote he had experienced something he described as an out-of-body event. He had written it down. He had drawn it. He was not ready to share the details yet, but he made clear that something had happened on that operating table that he intended to document and eventually make public. Excited to share when the time is right, he wrote. Consider what that means for a moment. Tyler Henry had spent years sitting across from grieving people, describing what he claimed to sense from those who had already crossed to the other side. He had built an entire career on that border between living and not. And now, during his third brain surgery at 29 years old, he was describing his own experience of something close to that same edge. Not as the one doing the reading, as the one being read. The audience that had followed him for years felt it. The comments, the responses, the reaction across social media made one thing clear. This update landed differently than anything he had shared before. Because for the first time, the questions his work had always raised were no longer abstract. They were sitting in a hospital room with him, waiting for an answer. Something shifted in the conversation after the third surgery. Not loudly, not with a single headline or a breaking announcement. It shifted the way things shift when a question that has been sitting in the background finally becomes impossible to ignore. Tyler himself opened the door. In candid interviews cited by multiple outlets in the months following his operations, Tyler acknowledged something he had never quite said so directly before. The cyst, the congenital growth that had been sitting near the center of his brain since birth, and the inflammation it caused may have played a role in the heightened sensitivities he had experienced since childhood. He did not frame it as a confession. He framed it as an honest observation. The regions of the brain affected by the swelling are the same regions tied to perception, intuition, and altered states of awareness. For roughly 30 years, those areas had been functioning under unusual and measurable pressure. What that means scientifically, spiritually, or otherwise is a question Tyler left open. And perhaps that was the most honest thing he could do. What was not left open was the toll. Tyler reduced his workload drastically throughout late 2025, canceling a significant portion of his scheduled readings and live shows. For a man whose private waiting list had reached 300,000 people, that kind of pullback was not a small decision. It was a public signal that something fundamental had changed. His personal life, carried its own unresolved weight. Tyler's Netflix series Life After Death with Tyler Henry had already exposed a family mystery that no reading could have prepared him for: the revelation that his mother, Teresa, had been taken from a hospital at birth by a woman who was later convicted of crimes that included 2 murders. That wound had no surgical fix. It remained exactly where it had always been. What 2025 made undeniable was simple. The man who had spent his career sitting with other people's grief, other people's loss, other people's unanswered questions about what lies beyond, had now faced death himself. 3 times, in 6 months, at 29 years old. Believe in his gift or don't. That part doesn't change what happened. 3 surgeries in 6 months, a brain that was never quite ordinary, and an out-of-body experience he hasn't fully explained yet. The next chapter of Tyler Henry's story is only beginning, and what he says happened during that 3rd surgery may be the most compelling thing he has ever shared.